I need more light. Tuesday, 1919, 12 seconds, year 2023, 7 months, July the 11th. Now, I need to lower this right here because it's too tight right here. Supposedly, it could be just. Now, here's the real problem. It's too much up right here. It needs to be able to go down. And I can see right here it's bending up right here. So this beam under here is what's causing this bulge. Yeah, that's the terminology. There's a bulge right here on the roof so that this doesn't lay flat with each other. So this right here is just in with one wood screw, so it should spin freely when I lower this. And I put the claw hammer in here because there was a space here and I could move this nail. It moved easily, which I thought it didn't move easily because I thought it was one of those hard pieces of wood and that's as far as it would go. And there's a wood screw just sitting here ready to tap in. And it's pushed through just a little bit up in there. Yeah. So now basically, now that I know that this can be flushed, what's up, Bumbler wanted to visit. Now that I know that this can go flush, because this nail moves, now I can move this whole beam over and flush it up right there. So I can loosen this nail and this nail, and that's the beauty with custom fit wood. The beauty is just to tack stuff down with just a little bit of nail going through, because I never know when I'm going to have to readjust it until I'm for sure that that's where everything needs to be. And then I'll hammer it all the way in. So that's what I'm gonna have happen. I'm gonna remove this nail and this nail. I'm just gonna pry it out till it's flush again and the board moves freely. And so I'm gonna have to, this one's already shored up. I got it shored up there, so it'll hold in spot. And this, it's just free. It's kind of got the roof on it. And I also put this here to adjust it down some to give it support. It needed to come down past the beam here. So I'm going to put a support beam up in here, a piece of shoring wood. It's one thing I learned in the Navy. To put one beam up against another to hold it in spot, it's called shoring. To be sure that everything's going to be secure, to be sure. So shoring. Shore is also on the ocean. That's a big. That's also symbolic as the bank to the river bank, the shoring, the surety. Wow. See, now all these pictures are just coming into me from things that I learned, and then whenever I learn a new word or a new phrase, all of a sudden I see the connection with all the other stuff that I learned, and it's like a missing puzzle piece to come in and give a broader perspective. So, and shoring on a ship, wood shoring on a ship is only there because most ships these days are metal, but back in the old days they used to be wood. So they would still use wood for wood on a wood ship. Now the reason to use shoring, they call it shoring, and that to use the shoring is if there's a hole in the ship and the ship's taking on water. It's bringing on water. In other words, it's got a hole, it's going to start to sink. So there needs to be something put in the hole and then put a piece of shoring plank behind it to hold it in the hole and to pry it into place, just like this. Everything's, this is shoring. See how it's secured? It's not going to move. It's not going to back out. You know, when the water pressure gets high, it wants to push that plug out. That plug's not going to come out because it has a piece of shoring behind it. Or in other words, a shoring, as in a shore to an ocean. That's where the sand and the water meets. Okay, it's the place where the sand and the water meets. It's the same thing as a river bank. The bank to the river. That's where the shore or the dirt, the earth, and the water meets. So there is an etymology, word study. That's what etymology is, to study words. Okay, there is a root to study right there for what banking really is, getting more down to earth, toward reality, more grounded. And this is where the Capricorn comes in, because supposedly it's the most grounded, earthy, and it's the cardinal sign. But there's still something else that's rooted into. So earthy, grounded, bank. Bank doesn't just mean all this money out here in these artificial banks, these temporal night order artificial banks. Those are just piles of higher structures and institutions. It's prostitution. That's what institute is. It's prostitution. Because people have to sell themselves. They sell the soul. That's what's taught. That's what's taught in the schools, but they don't tell everyone that. Or I wasn't told. Let me just keep it with me. I was not told that, because if I start including everyone, now it's going to be a vote for me thing, and a big people movement thing. But I just want to stand on the self that I know, and then let that be. See, just me standing with what I know is all that's needed. And it's an automatic effect with everything and everyone around. Automatically. And then if when or if another living organism sees, oh my God, I can stand on self-independence. A new thought comes in. Wow. I'm reading see, for me, just walking around, bringing what I bring is like a storybook. So I'm being read. And when I read a book, let me just stick to self-experience. When I read a book that someone else stood on, I think, wow, I got ideas now how to become more self-sustaining, more self-independent, instead of having to be subservient and relying on so-called a savior entity or a representative to speak for me, because I can't speak for myself. See? Now I can start to put things into effect through surety. So this getting closer to shore, sure, to be sure. In the deep south, they say shore. Shore is, okay. Shore is the bank, surety, to be sure. So banking is really self-security is what I see. Self-independence. Now, the original American Constitution is a group thing. But it's a transition. It's one step closer to real independence, self-independence. Group independence is a transition and a step. That's what I see. To less group members, to realizing that, I have a story and I can look around and share what I see. Now, to me, that's self-independence. I can access universal knowledge, wisdom, understanding, resources, and utilize those to strengthen the self. So to me, all these things, all these steps are wonderful, but to me, I've learned that, I want to transition and keep improving, or in other words, to keep maturing, to keep growing, to become more sure, more strength, to plug the leak, to keep the ship from going down, because the body and maritime system is referred to as a ship. In fact, when a body is summoned into the court, the judge is really only there, he wants to see the contract, but he also wants to see the captain to the ship. In other words, is there a soul here, or is this a robot that's going to do exactly what I tell it to do because it's been programmed? In other words, is the ship been abandoned? And if the ship has been abandoned, well, then he's going to say, whoa, look what I found. This is mine for the keeping and to do with what I want with it, which is exactly what happens at the hospital when babies are born. They are considered to be born dead. Or in other words, the ship has been abandoned. So the doctors and the attorneys, or the banker and the attorney, or the banker and the military together, those are the two main top branches. They say, oh shit, look, an abandoned treasury chest. A creditor has abandoned the share to the treasury. That's the corporate bankruptcy that went bankrupt. Because, I'll just speak for the self. When I was born at that hospital, I was considered to abandon the treasury, the creditor position. Because as a baby, I didn't rise up and say, oh, that I have equal share to all the resources, and especially being creditor to the corporate bankruptcy. Because when this corporation, known as the United States, and it is just a corporation no different than Walmart or Kmart or Chevron or Safeway or Shucks Auto Parts Store, all corporations are the same. So I went a little bit down the road. I got lost. So now I'm waiting. Honey, are you lost? No, I'm not lost. In a way, I am lost. Now, when I say lost, the train of thought, the focus on what it was, the point that I was getting at. Okay, so I was on banks. So now I'm starting to get navigational bearing. I was speaking on banks, shoring. So this is how I can, I'm really not lost. Now I can start to remember all the different points I was talking on. Shoring, surety, banks, riverbanks to shore stuff up, holes in ships, all these points that I touched. And how did I get to this point? Okay, when a ship is summoned into the court, the judge is looking to see, is the captain there? In other words, is there a creditor here? Because the creditor's credit was stolen. Okay, so when I went in the court, let me just say, when I went in the court, okay, the judge was looking to see. Because he knows that he's part of the club that stole or tricked me out of the creditor position as a baby, and tricked the mother to sign me over to the assumed jurisdiction to the doctor, or the doctor's another word for banker. The banker and his dog that he uses to sick on me to get me. That's known as the military. So the banker and the military are the two top positions. So anyway, yeah. Now I was going to get into explaining the bankruptcy, how the bankruptcy functions. All right, so when I'm weaseled out because I'm considered born dead, or I abandoned the ship, and mother was tricked into helping me abandon the ship or give up the share as a shareholder to the treasury creditor position. Because when the banker and his attorney military dog that he used to sick on me, to put me in place whenever I would question things or rebut things. That would be the sheriff, the police people, all the authority figures that are around. Those are just dogs. They're dogs for the banker. Woof, woof, woof. It's a hunting game. It's the hunter and his dog. The dogs are let loose to go track down, corner. They get cornered. Yeah. And then the banker steps in and says, I see you're cornered. Now, it's going to be my way or the highway, unless you have a claim. But he's not even going to bring that up. He'll only start talking claim when the one that's cornered says, I have a claim. And that's what the affidavit is. It's a rebuttal to the assumed jurisdiction and speak up as creditor to the bankruptcy that the banker is in. The banker and his attorney are bankrupt. So, 1929, that was bankruptcy number 3. And it was also the same year that the Depression happened, 1929. And the Depression was it was a diversion, a worldwide diversion from what happened in Congress when HJR 192 couple years later come up to explain more what was going on. But the Great Depression was really a diversion from the bankruptcy, but the two went hand in hand. And basically what happened is the United States Corporation, which is no different than any store corporation, when they went bankrupt, what that meant is that they ran out of money to pay back the English bankers for the Revolutionary War, because that's really all what it comes down to. The reason why there was a Revolutionary War, because, quote unquote, the founding fathers supposedly broke away from England. But they really never did. It just looks like they did. And what's not taught in the public schools is that those same founding fathers that supposedly broke away went back to England and borrowed money from the bank that they were supposedly breaking away from. What other bank was there to borrow from? England and Rome already subserviented all the other nations, so there was no other bank. The Bank of England is actually the Vatican. There was nowhere to get money, so they weren't really breaking away. Although in the history books it sounds like, oh yeah, we broke away, we won the war. Now, see, all the truth is not being told to the children. Well, let me just say, the whole truth wasn't told to me. So there I go again, including everyone else. That's a big tax. Now someone might have to feel that like they agree to me because what I'm saying sounds like so much sense. But for me, I don't like putting a tax and a heavy burden like that on someone. So I always have to keep training the self and remember that I need to say that's what was taught to me. I was taught that there was a Revolutionary War and that the founding fathers were the heroes and that they were able to break away from England. But later on, many years later on down the road, I realized they didn't break away from England. In fact, 1789 was bankruptcy number 1 because in the Vatican's system, an international bankruptcy is 70 years. So whenever a country borrows from the Pope or from the Jesuit General, because the Jesuit General controls the Pope, and the Jesuits are the ones, that's Ignatius Loyola, who created and founded the Jesuit movement. And he took over Rome. He took the Pope over, infiltrated. It used to be the Pope was all in charge until Loyola came along. And the only reason that Loyola came along was because there was this movement called the Martin Luther movement, where supposedly the Protestants, Martin Luther, Supposedly he broke away from Rome, and I'm here to say, no, he didn't break away. He made it look like he was breaking away. Well, it's the same thing when the Founding Fathers, they said, oh, we got our independence. No, they made it look like they got their independence. It was all another fake media show. It isn't nothing new. That's what I've learned what the bully is. He does not know anything new to do. He does the same thing all the time. It's always a make it look like something show, and there's something else going on behind the scenes that I wasn't told. I almost said that the public wasn't told. I'm just going to say it for me. I was not told. And this is what I know. So anyway, so the Founding Fathers borrowed money from England in order to hire soldiers to fight a war to make it look like now they're fighting for independence. They borrowed a lot of money. And it was gold back then. Gold. They borrowed a lot of gold. And 70 years later, after they were given 70 years to pay it back. And of course, they ain't going to pay it back because they just have to make it look good, though, because it's all part of the plan. It's the Roman Empire, the great Roman Empire. You know, when Trump comes along and says, make America great again, okay, this is all getting back to the Roman Empire because they're Biden, Trump, Bush, Obama, they're all puppets for the Vatican. And the Vatican serves what I see as some extraterrestrial entity, some higher intelligence. And they've got a little pact going. So the first bankruptcy was 1789. And when they could not pay back in gold to England, of course, whenever there's a loan, a bank loan, the bank always asks for collateral. In other words, collateral is something that the bank asks for, and he says, what do you got to give me if you can't pay me back? And the Founding Fathers, of course, being on the same team and knowing the plan, of course they're going to say, we shall give you, or we will give you, because everything's based on death, we will give you, no matter who needs to be killed, we will give you titles to all the buildings that we built over here. And that's exactly what happened, bankruptcy number 1. Because in the maritime system, the most valuable thing isn't the land or the structures on the land, it's the title to the land and the title to the structures. That's what they're always after. Title is another word for a storybook. They're after the storybook. And I can get into more explanations for that. So anyway, everything out in the court out here happening today, it's the same thing going on television with sports. And the title holder is voonka voonk voonk in the corner, and his opponent is weighing in at 550 pounds. Da 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 da, facing the title holder. Everything out here is all about snatching up titles. That's the way the system is. But those titles are assumed titles. It's just something someone wrote on a piece of paper. The bully came up with an idea and he wrote a story and he said, I automatically own everything, so I'm just going to write it on a piece of paper. See, look, I own it. What are you going to do about it? That's the only thing they got, because they got no agreement, no contract from me. I didn't sign nothing that said that they own everything around here. And they know it. That's what they know that I know. And that's the greatest thing they fear, is that being exposed. But it has to be. It all gets into the motherly, the mother bringing a child up, raising a child. The mother being conscious that she is the mother, and that she has been, that I, the mother, or, the mother, I just use the mother as an example. The mother starts to realize, oh my God, I've been controlled by the child. And now I have to teach the child, help the child to grow up, to mature, to share. Because all the child knows is go around telling a story with his title on his books saying, I own everything. And he backs it up only with violence. But anyway, bankruptcy number 1, 1789. From the day the loan was put in place, 70 years prior, 1789 is the first bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy number 2 is the same year that Oregon's flag raised up, 1859. And so when when they went bankrupt and they couldn't pay, here goes the Red Baron to get some noise. There's the Red Baron up there, look. On the flying trapeze. So when they couldn't pay, they had to give England title to all the buildings, and then they reborrowed again. Or not necessarily reborrowed, after they gave them, there was an agreement, but it's all finagled behind the scenes because they got a master plan. So they're given 70 more years to pay it back, the Revolutionary War debt. Okay, this is the money that they borrowed from the Vatican, or they call it the Bank of England, in order to supposedly break away and become independent. That's what yeah. So bankruptcy number 2, 1859, that's when Oregon became a state. Guess what happened in 1859? Well, that's not a question. I'm just going to give a statement. Bankruptcy number 2, 70 years later. So now the collateral for bankruptcy number 2 was title to all the land. It was no longer just title to all the buildings, all the structures. Now it's title to all the structures and the land. Now, the same thing happens again for the third time, bankruptcy number 3, which is 1829, 70 years later. From 1859 to 1829 is bankruptcy number 3, and that was the Depression. Now, what happened in bankruptcy number 3 is this. The people running the United States Corporation completely ran out of gold. In fact, they ran out of so much gold, there was a gold confiscation that went out in 1820, around that area, 1829, where the hell, 30, 31, whatever, leading up to 1933, the congressional movement, HJR 1 and 92, which was the national emergency, because they just ran out of gold. They ran out of gold, and they went and they confiscated all the gold from the people, and they told them, and this is in the history books, and it's taught in the schools, or was taught in the schools, not so much today. But they made a legal code. If everyone does not turn in their gold. Now, I am using the word everyone because this is a public proclamation, declaration, or whatever. It's known in history. So now I am going to collude everyone. Everyone was told if you don't turn in your gold, you get a 10-year prison sentence. So everyone turned in all their gold. So they ran out of gold, paying the Bank England, the Vatican, the same gold that they borrowed from England. So England got their gold back no matter what, and they got all the titles to the land and all the titles to the buildings. And bankruptcy number 2, or number 3 is coming, and they still owe them all the gold still. Now they're out of gold, so they had to go get some more gold in order to function, so they stole all the people's gold. Completely stripped them. Because they got control over the people through the years and the years and the years, people and the children are taught that they better do what they're told, and children don't know any better. They're adults now. They don't know what's going on. All they know is if they mess up, they're going to get thrown in jail, punished. So they just do what they're told now. That's what happens after generations and generations. It's called dumbing down, to dumb down. So I say that generally and publicly because that's public knowledge right there. Anyone can go into the history books and read in the schools or at the library. During the Great Depression, a little bit after that, all gold was told to be turned in or there's going to be mandatory 10-year prison sentence. So anyway, 1929 is bankruptcy number 3. Now, the people running the country, they were given another 70 years. But this time, the collateral is, it's the people. And so that's when they started creating titles for people. So there's titles for buildings, there's titles for the land, just like there's titles for all these cars. And the title for the people is the birth certificate that comes out of the hospital. Now, how does a birth certificate achieve value, money value? Just like how does a building achieve money value? How does land achieve money value? See? A birth certificate represents, okay, because bankruptcy number 3 in 1929, and when 1933 came along, and they ran out of gold, okay, so they had no more gold to pay the bankers back. No more gold. So they created a new gold, which is humans. You know, out in the towns, they have these buildings out here in departments called human resources. Humans are now the gold. And the reason behind that is because the only way gold is brought up out of the ground is when a slave is forced to dig it out. And that's the value in a human. In other words, it's called stolen labor or stolen gold. So the title or the birth certificate, which the doctors look to get assumed jurisdiction over, and his attorney, and the baby is born creditor to the bankruptcy, and I'm going to explain how that happened. That's because in 1933, when HJR 192 came out, and the national emergency, and this is on the public record, it's on the websites. Google search HJR 192, and it can be read. And it says this: because of the national emergency. Well, what national emergency is that? Well, that's the question. I'm going to share what the national emergency is because it doesn't say it in the resolution. It doesn't say it. One has to know what was going on. Because in Congress, all these guys running the show, they ain't going to share what it really is. But a national emergency is the bankruptcy. Because if they have no more gold to back their paper money, because now they're using paper money. It went from gold to gold-backed paper money to human labor-backed paper money. Because humans are now the gold. Now the reason why humans became gold, because in the resolution it says, because of the current national emergency, all debts are now canceled. And basically it goes on to say in kind of different language, but I'm going to summarize what it says. It is unlawful to pay for anything. That's it. It's unlawful. In other words, when I read that, I see between the lines. In other words, everything is supposed to be Treasury prepaid because I labor. But they learn how to steal the labor that I bring forth. So, you know, but I can sense the stress in the back, you know. I'm a bit anxious and neurotic with it in the explanations, and it's really not coming out clear as I want to come out. But the more I go over it, the more I go over it, the more I go over it, the more I say it, the more I share it, the more I share it, the more clear it comes out. Especially if I was just to, you know, be relaxed. Because this story, you know, it really needs a real long time to share. Or to be shared in long steps, long presentations, because there's a lot that has happened. So, you know, what I'm hoping to bring is to shorten the process up, you know, to be more clear, simpler, and more simple and more simple. And it is progressing. I see it happening all the time. So, but anyway, you know, that gets me why this whole video started, because this cat rain shed here. So, you know, the shoring, I said I put some shoring to hold the wooden spot. And shoring is a naval term. Navy. I was in the Navy. I was trained what shoring is. Okay. So when I say, you know, knowing how language gets, you know, cross-tendered, in the South they say sure thing. In other words, they don't say sure, like surety. Who's the surety? Who's sure around here? Are you, you know, am I secure? Am I sure? Is there something that I really know, or am I just repeating someone else's story? So, surety or shore, to plug up a hole so that the ship doesn't sink, because that's the maritime system. This is maritime language. The whole system across the planet is a maritime system. In other words, the water rules for ships that go out to sea, those same rules that apply to the water have been brought onto the land. So, when I was born, I was considered a ship floating on the sea. And if I knew what was going on, I would have captained that ship from day one as a little baby. Or as a little child, as I was growing and growing and growing, I would have captained that ship. But since I didn't know what was going on, I didn't know how to drive the ship. So the ship was considered abandoned. And anything that's out there that's considered abandoned, you know, it's like, you know, oh, look, this is lost. Put an ad in the papers. Does this belong to anyone? And they know how to finagle that so no one knows what's going on, too, so they can back their tracks up. Yeah, I put an ad in the paper, you know, telling them that the Human's Treasury credit was abandoned. You know, they cover all that stuff, but it's all fraud and a lie. They stole it. They forced the baby to abandon. They forced the child, and they never educate the child. They never fully disclose what's going on with the child so that the child could captain the ship. Me as the child. So there I go again, talking generally. Let me stand corrected. They never told me as the child, that I have the capacity to access the treasury account as creditor, and everything is prepaid for me. And all technology was supposed to be shared with me. They never told me that. And they never told me that they stole all that. They stole the share that I was supposed to have. Which the resources are unlimited, infinite. There's infinite, and this isn't the only planet around here that has resources and knowledge and technology. This ain't the only galaxy. It's vast out there, whatever it is that's out there. And if, you know, some say that this is a flat Earth, and I say, well, even if it's flat, even the studying the flat Earth concept, they say in the flat Earth concept, there's more beyond all the ice walls that they say that are around the flat Earth. There's more beyond the dome, supposedly, according to the Bible story. They say, well, there's a dome that covers everything and all that. No, so I say, whether it's round, whether it's a planet, I just get real with everyone. With all the stories that I hear, I just say, well, if it's square, if it's triangle, if it's flat, if it's round, if it's, whatever it's shaped, I sure would really like to know, and I think that information is being withheld from me and withheld on purpose. But since how I have a claim now, a counterclaim, I've rebutted all that trickery. In other words, I've audited it and exposed it. And I am continuing to expose and audit everything. But I did officially put in an affidavit, hand-to-hand combat, registered mail, with verbiage on it to let them know that I know what's going on. And so now they've been testing me for a long time. Does this brother really know what's going on? And they're figuring out, oh my God, this dude knows something. Not only does he know something, he implements things. This is the relationship that we're having. I'm just sharing this. The relationship between me and the extraterrestrial that controls the Vatican and the government, politicians, the whole gamut, CEOs, employees. So, now, bankruptcy number 4 already happened. And according to biblical rules, which they use as their banking mechanism, they use biblical principles as their banking mechanism. Okay, in the Old Testament, there's this thing called the year of Jubilee. That's when everything is completely wiped clean. And everything is supposed to be given back that they stole. Everything. Everything. All prisoners are to be set free. All debts are to be canceled. Everything. Everything is fresh start, new scratch. It's known as bankruptcy number 4, Jubilee. 70 years from 1929, which was the third bankruptcy, also known as the Depression. 70 years later was 1999. I remember when Prince wrote the song, I'm gonna party like it's 1999. Because I think Prince knew something. In fact, there's a lot of these Hollywood actors and high-level musicians that knew a little something and know a little something what's going on. And some of them are on the team to keep the fraud going and to keep me entertained, to try to keep me entertained anyway, to continue to try to keep me entertained and to worship them and think, oh God, I wish I could be a millionaire too and be on stage and be famous too and perpetuate and, do what the Vatican tells me to do too and just continue on with the theft and the fraud and all this dying and death and suffering and pain as though it's normal and it's supposed to be. Oh yeah. They're out there to try to keep me entertained, and I'm just going to keep it for me. And they wish like the back of their butts that I would join their team. God, how they wish. But I don't, and I won't. But never know what's going to happen tomorrow. I always say, I never know what's going to happen tomorrow. There might be a break into ice somewhere. There might be a new treaty agreement. There might be a compromise. See, I don't rule anything out. I don't stay locked into anything. But one thing I know as it stands right now, I am going to continue the way I'm going right now. Until I see the next step clearly to step into the next step. Sometimes I'll put a foot in the door, and sometimes I'll pull right back out because I see some shit going on. Sometimes I'll put the foot back in the door, and if I sense there's the all clear, I might step in a little bit further. Then if I see some shit coming, I'll step back, or I'll step all the way out, and I might even back up a bit. And I might even run the other way. But eventually I'll get back up to the door, I'll look in and I'll feel it out again. I'll get in, because what I'm walking to is a potential trap, and the door behind me is probably going to shut and be locked, and I'll be locked in. And I ain't going to walk into no trap. I'm going to be sure there's going to be escape routes as I'm looking in there. I'm going to see, okay, I'm going to be able to go this way. I'm going to be able to go this way with this movement, with this idea, and that way, and that way, and that way. I've learned to be very leery to anything, because anything can be a trap. That includes relationships, friendships, anything going out here out the town, neighbors, everything. Because I know what's going on. And to me, that's very wise to be that way. Because I come from, and I speak from a very, very high level what's going on. But anyway, so 1999 came along. That's supposed to be the Jubilee. Now, there's all kinds of things that happened in relation to the farmers and Jubilee, and how one farmer won a case in federal court. And this gets all into this supposed act called NESARA, something like the National Emergency Securities Act, something like that. In other words, when the farms were all taken over, there was one farmer that went in court and won. And everything that the government stole from the farmers was supposed to be given back. And it has not been given back yet. And that's where this document, supposedly called NESARA, ties into the fourth bankruptcy called the Jubilee, 1999. This is when President Clinton was in office. And he had signed some papers saying he was going to implement NESARA and give things back, and there was going to be a new system and this, and that. And it never happened. Because what happened is the Vatican hijacked everything again. And so it might be a good thing, too. Because this is what caused the individual, which is me, the I, with the individual declaration, independent declaration, that's the affidavit. That's also known as the flag that's flying on the ship. So not only is this ship not abandoned, it has a captain, and it has a significant flag flying on the ship. And when pirates are out to sea and they see a flag flying on a ship, they get very, 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 very cautious. But if they don't see no flag, they say to themselves, easy pickings. And so when I look out here and I see all these people that have not captained their ship and don't know what's going on and put no flag or affidavit up on the ship that they sail, all these pirate attorneys and bankers and high officials in the counties and in the states and the governments, they see all these people that have not claimed, put in a claim to rebut all the assumed jurisdiction going on around here. They say, oh my God, look at all the free pickings. Look at all these slaves out here that don't know how to defend themselves, don't know nothing what's going on. They just roll over and answer any question I ask, do whatever they're told. They say, oh my God, this is great. They love it. I mean, this is what I see going on. I'm not here to put people down. I'm just here to tell the truth, what I know. But when they look at someone like me, they think to themselves, uh-oh, he's captaining the ship and he's flying a flag. In other words, he's got an affidavit up. He's got an agreement and he's got a contract and they agreed to it. See, that's the thing. And they know it. In other words, they know that I know what they know. Otherwise, they look at everyone else and they say, these guys don't know nothing. Not only do they know that I know not only do they know what I know, not only do they know that I know what they know, they surveil me 24 hours a day and read all the thoughts that are into this brain. And they send thoughts into the brain to try to manipulate me, try to get me to doubt the position that I hold and the words that I wrote on that paper, which is the contract that they agreed to. And that's called psychological warfare, radioactive warfare, radio warfare, mind control warfare, MK Ultra, Monarch Butterfly programs, warfare. And these are the things that I know. And they know that I know it. But they hope someday they can crack me. That's just the bully's hope. The child never really gives up. The child only comes to a realization, when the child's ready and when they realize, oh my God, I've been controlling mother, but now mother knows. Now mother's growing up and she's becoming strong and stronger and stronger and stronger and realizing her power as the mother. And she's becoming more mature than me, the bully child. Oh my God. That's when the child starts to melt. Starts to show honor. That's when the child starts to show honor. The respect starts to come. Sharing all the hoarded resources with me and only me. Because I'm just going to speak for me. I'm not going to speak for no one else. But what I can see happening is that other living organisms have the capacity to also be shared with too. And to me, all this information that I just said on this video is truly what Team Biden-Trump, this is Team Biden-Trump, they play opposite sides of the fence to herd the cattle in a certain direction. To me, this is what they fear the most as the team. Is this information getting out? Because when all living organisms, or the majority living organisms, or most living organisms that know, then they start to lose slaves. And the more slaves they lose, because slaves start to, the mature to realize that they're the motherly figure and they're dealing with a child now, then their kingdom starts to dwindle in size and power. But also at the same time, the mystery to it all is that's really what the child wants and desires deep inside, that the child will never admit until it's ready to admit it for the child's self and the child's self only, and it shall not be persuaded or manipulated or tricked into that confession. It has, to me, I'll just speak from self-experience. When I started realizing what was going on with me, with all the faults that I carried in me, and I still carry faults too, but I'm growing out of them. The only thing that could get me out of them was a self-admittance for me. It could not come from no persuasion from someone else. Although I could hear stories here and there. But if I sensed that anyone's story was a pressure point for me, it's kind of like for me too. When I speak these things into the air in front of my brother, or brother Jason, he's not my brother, he's just brother Jason, because I don't own him. I don't want to own him. I'm careful with that word my. He's just brother Jason. When I speak these things in brother Jason's hearing, sometimes I can sense that I'm coming across like I'm, forcing something on him. Sometimes I can feel that way. And only because I know that I also have the bad habit, bully habit too, that I'm still weaning out and learning how to mature and grow up more and more. So it's not like, I'm totally clean before him. To me, that would be self-righteousness. And I don't like being self-righteous. But I realize I got a bad habit too. And I also tell him that too. But he doesn't even want to hear that, because it's all connected to the same story that I share with him. He doesn't even want to hear that. He doesn't want to hear me sharing my faults with him at all. Right now. He don't want to hear nothing. That's where he's at with it. And so one of these days, I could, as I'm growing more and more and more, eventually I'll be able to sit before him and say less and less and less. But as it is right now, that's just where I'm at. And knowing that he's controlled by the extraterrestrials in the Vatican, and it is the child that's speaking to him or through him to me, that is guarding that soul, Jason the soul, because they don't want to lose Jason. They don't want to lose one soldier that does their business for them. They don't want to lose one soldier because there's a soul there. They don't want that soul waking up. And they also don't want the soul that they have waking up. But yet at the same time, they want it. So they're constantly in conflict within themselves, which is different from where I'm at, although the bad habit comes up. But I want it to happen. I want it to happen. I look forward for it to happen. I press forward every day to grow it more and more and more. Every day. But anyway, this whole subject matter came up because I was speaking on shoring. To be shore, which is the Coast Guard also. The shoreline is the Coast Guard. That's also known as the bank. And when I was looking at the library, going to the Coast Guard's website, looking for the place to post the lien position that I hold, the affidavit, to post a flag, because I was told, Winston Shrout said that the Coast Guard has a place to post that affidavit publicly on the Coast Guard website. And when I was at the library, July the 9th, some years ago, not too many years ago, 2017, 2018, something like that. That's when I got an emergency email from Dad saying your mother just went down. And so I was interrupted. From posting that, from the searches. I was interrupted in the searches. I was deep in search. I was on the website. I was getting names, this, and that. And I still got some of the names pinned to the wall inside the room. But I haven't had time to get back to it yet. If I wanted to post it on the Coast Guard website. But I just bring that up because I mentioned the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is the same as the bank because that's the river bank. It's the place where the land and the water meets. It's known as the shore, or what's going on right here, shoring. I'm holding something in place with shoring with another piece of wood. I'm holding another piece of wood in place, which is a Navy term to shore the plug in the hold of the ship to keep the water from coming in. The maritime system. This is all maritime language. And here comes the helicopter, which is helicopters are also on the Navy. They got helicopters in the Army too. The Army and the Navy, it's all the same. There is no difference. All the branches of the military are all one. They serve the same Vatican Jesuit general. That's the head military honcho. There is no separation in the militaries. The Coast Guard, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, it's all the same thing. Each one has a different mission, though. All for the same cause. And that's to do what they're told, according to what the Jesuit general wants, and that's to maintain, assume jurisdiction over as many people, as many animals, as much land, as much space, as many planets or flat earths or triangle earths as they can. In team with the alien, extraterrestrial, higher intelligence, whatever's up there, all in the name of their favorite religion. They say, God is controlling everything, and I am God. The Pope says, I'm the vicar of Christ. I'm only doing God's work. I'm continuing on where Jesus left off. That's their story. And that's public. That's known in the public. But most people don't know exactly, don't study Catholicism to really know that for sure and to be conscious with it every day. I'm conscious with it every day. I know that the Pope thinks that he's the vicar of Christ. That's what he calls himself, the vicar of Christ. In other words, he's continuing on where Jesus left off, since how Jesus left. And he said that Jesus personally talked to him and told him that he's now in charge of everything. And that's what he tells all the Catholic congregations. And all the Protestant breakaways had never broke away. Because when Martin Luther came along, he was part of the plan too, to spread Catholicism in the name of a Protestant breakaway. In other words, they were spreading the new Jesus story, the new interpretation to the Bible. That happened back in 1550. That's when Martin Luther came along and the Jesuit military order, Ignatius Loyola, went to the Pope and he said, I shall create a military to go out and round up all the Protestants and bring them back into the fold. But that's just the story that's told in the public history. What was really going on that I see is they were looking to promote the new Jesus interpretation to the old ancient astrology Jesus interpretation that had been told throughout the earth for many thousands, multiple thousands of years before they came up with the new interpretation to that astrology Jesus interpretation Bible book. That's the new personal Jesus. You know, like the band U2 sings. There's a band called U2. When I was growing up in the 80s, here's the melody to the song and the lyrics. The new personal Jesus. Someone to call and to love. Someone of whatever the lyrics are, the rest of the lyrics, but that's the melody. Whenever that's heard on the radio, most everybody in America, knows that song. Okay? Yeah, that's the personal Jesus. That is a song that can be used to represent what happened when Martin Luther supposedly broke away from the Pope. And I'm here to say, what if and could be. It's all just a what if and could be. No, he did not break away. Just like the founding fathers never broke away from the Bank of England. They pretended to break away publicly in front of everybody and tricked everybody that was a breakaway. But no, they were using this as an excuse to go out and promote the new Jesus interpretation to that old ancient Bible. It was the personal Jesus. They started going around saying Jesus died 2,000 years ago, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, and John was the father of Jesus, and Moses was this, and all the characters play a part. But in the old ancient astrology, Jesus represents a part inside the human body, an organ. Mother Mary represents another organ inside the body, and all the other names that are in the Bible, they all represent organs in the body, which in correlation are as above, so below in the Illuminati. Everything going on inside the body is the same thing that's going on in all the stars that have been studied. Ancient astrology, which comes out of China. Ancient astrology, China. And to this day, China, what I see going on, China is trying to get rid of the old ancient astrology knowledge as fast as they can. Reason being, because they know who I am. And I ain't the only one telling this information, but I'm the only one telling it the way I tell it. And I give a lot of extra stuff that I know that a lot of people haven't even shared yet on social media or from a yard like I share. So what I know, folks, China is really afraid of meat. France is really afraid of meat. Germany is really afraid of meat. Australia is really afraid of meat. Israel is really afraid of me, because I have stepped up to the plate and let them all know who I am. And I told them, I am a self-appointed, non-commissioned auditor. And I'm sharing everything that I know. So Japan is afraid of me. Every nation, Iran, Iraq, they're all afraid of me. But it's all just a what if could be. But this is what I share. This is what I see going on. I see it more and more and more, and I experience more and more and more. I don't expect anyone to believe me. I'm passionate with it. And it comes out authoritarian. But there's a difference between passion and rage. Rage and arrogance are like two brothers. Now, there's a good side to arrogance too. Arrogance is also self-secure. Arrogance is also self-confident. Arrogance is also, I know who I am. And more every day. Big difference. Big difference. Big difference between rage and arrogance. That would be Brother Jason. Rage and arrogance. And he ain't the only one. There are many people on the earth that are bound with rage and arrogance on the dark side. Now, on the light side, rage is known as passion, and arrogance is known as self-confidence. It's the same energy used a different way. It's just like martial arts. There's energy in martial arts, and they know, they've studied it, and they know that they tap into the energy. Now, some use the energy in a deep, dark way to control. Others use the energy, they call it self-defense. They say, I'm just defending the self. Which still isn't the greatest thing, because, but in a way, it's better than going around hurting people on purpose. Defense is a step toward, something more wonderful. And I can get in and explain all that, but here I am an hour and 8 minutes into the video. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a pull the finger.